Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range, and today it's moderately rare Enfield time again. This particular rifle here, which has featured on the channel a bit already, and I rather like. Now this is a Sterling conversion of a No.4. I can't be 100% certain that it was done by Sterling rather than as a kit. I think the best thing to do is to just take it straight over to the table and we'll look at it close up and I'll tell you all about it. Okay, so we've got the Sterling conversion here and a standard long branch No.4 Mark 1 star here. As far as the externals go, the stock and so on is unchanged. This is built on a Mark 1/2 action, so you can see a little difference there. That's a Mark 2 style wood. The difference is that the trigger here is hung on a lug on the receiver, Mark 2 style, and here it's hung still on the trigger guard, just like it was in the early ones. Now, the obvious thing you see is the shape of the magazine, because the cartridge is very differently shaped. And just to put it in perspective, if I take that out, the 303 magazine, and it's clearly this is not right. This is not going to work. This is, no, forget it. So what we have here is a magazine shaped and adapted for the 7.62 NATO cartridge. Now, one thing that's interesting about this magazine design, sorry, we're going to nerd out here, is that there's actually quite a lot of room in the front, and what stops the rounds going forward is actually these reinforcing ridges, which are positioned so as to hold the shoulder of the round back. Now, if you do get it in front, you get a problem, and there's an interesting bit on the lip. You see there, you've got a potential place for them to hook up under, so if you're not pushing the rounds down at the rear, then you can actually run into issues. But keep them back and it is reliable. So the left side of the magazine is marked up with Sterling 7.62mm conversion, and then details on the provisional patent they first filed. The patent was actually granted in May 1962. The cunning thing of putting it on the magazine is that irrespective of who does the work, it still has your name on it, which is quite clever. Now, the thing with the Sterling magazines compared to the Enfield ones is that these will just drop in. They should be fully interchangeable. They don't need any extra machining on the underside of the receiver. If we put them both up there, you should see that there's no changes gone on in the receiver. So this is the Sterling conversion and this is the long branch, and the only thing that's been changed in the bolt is a longer extractor to push the rimless 7.62 cartridge against the side of the receiver, and I'll show you that in a minute when I show you the ejector. Now, you can run them with a 303 extractor. It will extract, but it typically won't eject because it's not long enough. So here on the outside you can see the extra ejector that they brought in, which is further forward due to the shorter overall length of the 7.62 NATO cartridge. And what they've done is they've drilled a hole here in front of the existing hole for the normal 303 ejector screw, and then they use that to attach the ejector via a piece of spring steel here. And on the other side of the rifle, you can see that it's a nub. It is sprung, but it's very tight. However, this is, as we discussed before in the context of the 303 rifle, that this is actually to eject unfired cases, because it's a friction eject off the side wall of the receiver. And if I just close the bolt on an empty case, it should eject. Of course, it doesn't work on camera. It ejects before we get anywhere near there. That's as far as it went. However, with a dummy round, it provides the fail-safe to make sure it gets kicked out. And a lot of the gunsmith made ones don't have this. Now, the next luxury feature here is a charger bridge adapter, and what they've done is it appears that they've machined off the the top of the charger bridge, because if you just compare it with a 303 one, it's straight, and they've sort of keyed it in and it's fitted with a screw. This is an absolutely massive piece, and it's fitted for the absolutely dreadful NATO chargers, and there'll be a strip club episode on this, but it's not so great. I mean, it works, but it sometimes dumps the top round a bit forward, because the rounds actually need to go into the mag behind the base of the charger, and it's like the first 4 go in fine, the last one you've really got to make sure you push it down and back, and then it's fine, and it does eject, but it's a bit tight. Now by rights these Swedish Mauser chargers shouldn't work because they present super high. You can just see how long they've got to go down to free fall to get into the magazine, but they work really well, and I actually ran Finnish Brutality on them, so that was a bit of a turn up for the books. So the last thing to talk about before I talk about why I think that this is a Sterling made one is the barrel. And these ones are 6-groove right hand twist, I believe 1 in 10, I haven't measured it. This one's not well stocked up, it's got a bit of sideways pressure it shouldn't have. These don't shoot as well as the 303s in general, with standard stocking up or with bad stocking up. Now the equivalent rifle in Canada, the DCRA rifle, Dominion of Canada Rifle Association rifle, which is basically same configuration for target shooting, they centre bedded them and they shot really well. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm not going to change the stock, but I'm going to try and do a poor man's centre bedding with some cork or some veneer shim or something like that in there. So why I think this is a Sterling made one and not a Gunsmith made one is that not only does it have all of the luxury features, and these two are normally omitted in Gunsmith made ones, but they've gone above and beyond. Now I think originally this is going to have been an early Mark 1, just judging by the roughness of some of the non-critical machining there and there, for instance, is pretty miserable. It was FTR'd by Fazakerley some point after World War II, where it was turned into a Mark 1/2, so they brazed on the lug to hang the trigger off of the receiver. But it was scrubbed by Fazakerley, when properly scrubbed. There's no marking, there's no trace of any marking to see whether it was a Maltby or a BSA or whatever. It's been stripped again, and the whole thing's been Parkerized, and even the front sight protector has been Parkerized. Also, drilling that hole is non-trivial, and it's Parkerized on the inside of the hole. So I don't really see a provincial gunsmith going to these lengths, but I see Sterling having gone to these lengths. And this came to me in the grease. It's got a Birmingham civilian proof for it to be sold and exported, but it hadn't been fired other than that. So I got the grease out of this, and I shot it for the first time in anger, as it were. So I am 99% sure that this is a Sterling made one. In Skennerton there's one that's all engraved up with Sterling and what have you, but that was probably a presentation model they took around trade shows to try and flog the conversion kits and the conversion work. And one final point to show how much they were really eyeing military sales for the kits and for the conversion work is that the muzzle has the correct lugs for the bayonet. So kits were sent out for trial to Malaya, Hong Kong, Kenya, India and other Commonwealth countries, and India actually placed a tender for 80,000 units, of which 20,000 were complete rifles and 60,000 were conversion kits, because there were tons of number 4s kicking around there, and you can sometimes find Indian refurbed number 4s, and they're easily identifiable by the very, very dark wood and a crossbolt through the stock. Ultimately, India did its own thing with the rifle 2A and 2A1, so SMLEs made in 7.62 NATO. 1,000 conversions were sent to Sierra Leone. There were smaller batches sent to New Zealand, apparently used by police, forestry service, things like that. Now, otherwise, in terms of potential commercial government contracts, after World War II, the Brits had been handing out number 4 rifles as military aid like candy. They're all over Europe, Italy, Netherlands, Belgium and Germany also, I believe. So at the time when NATO's forming and there's NATO standardization, there was the potential for large government sales for cheap second-line rifles. ultimately this all fell through, but on the commercial market, there were fair numbers of the conversion kits sold on the civilian market. So as late as the early 90s, possibly even early 2000s, I remember seeing adverts in the British shooting press for the conversion kits. So a lot of the ones you come across are just gunsmith build ones based around the kits. There's quite a lot were made by a company in the UK called Charnwood Ordnance. They have a special marking, I'll put it up, the CO serial number, and they were built up using not only Sterling conversion kits but also parts from Enfield as well. They're a bit of a mix and match, and typically they don't have the luxury items, so the charger guide and the auxiliary extractor. There's also, you see, number 5 type conversions. Whether they're just cut down from the number 4 ones or were specially made like that, I don't actually know. Anyway, having just mentioned Enfield components, what did Enfield do? And the answer was rip off Sterling again, having literally just done that a few years prior with the Sterling submachine gun. We like your submachine gun. We'll build it ourselves and we won't pay you because we're the British government. Thank you, come again. They've been sued over that. They got sued over this conversion, but by the time the litigation on the conversion kits was wrapping up, it was a bit of a moot point because they decided that they'd just produce enough L1A1 SLRs, so the British inch FN FAL rifles, for everybody, and sort of it was then a non-issue. Anyway, the Enfield conversions are for another time, and they're the L8 series. I don't have one. I don't know of one in Switzerland, but I have an L39, and by using close-up, I can show the bits that are in common between the L39 and the L8, so that shouldn't be a problem. But as I said, for another time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the video. Please consider becoming a patron if you haven't already done so, because it really helps us to keep the channel chugging along nicely, and see you again sometime. Bye.